Okay, there was some technical glitch. Am I audible now? Okay, okay, cool. Now, we were discussing about what is an API, and in simple terms, an API is like a restaurant. You go to a restaurant and you order some food. The waiter comes, takes your order, and goes to the kitchen. The kitchen makes your food. In the kitchen, you prepare your food, and the waiter brings your food back to you. So in this case, you who ordered the food uh, is the client, the kitchen is the database, and the server or the waiter who is serving you the food is the API. Now, this was a very simple example. If you want to know more about APIs, our amazing speakers, Shatabrata and Harsh, have taken sessions on APIs, so you can watch those. They are available in our YouTube channel. Now, today we will be integrating the API, an external news API, with our Flutter app using the Dio package. Now, what is Dio? Dio is a very, very powerful HTTP client package that helps us to connect various external services with the client. Here, in this case, our app. Now, if we go to Dio, we can see a number of things. And here, I will be simplifying all those things to you. In today's session, we'll be using the get function of Dio. Before that, I was just structuring our code and nothing else, making some folders and making the code clean so that our business logic and our UI stays separate. Since in Flutter everything is a widget, so sometimes it becomes problematic in separating your functional logic or business logic with the UI. So in this case, we will do that here. Now we made a pages folder where we are storing our home page. Here we will just import the news card. And here we have to import the material dot package. And this is a shortcut, handy shortcut, that is a control and full stop. And you will get suggestions here to import the required classes. Okay, so we are done with the structuring. Let's now import Dio in our pubspec.yaml. And this is the first time we are using an external package in Flutter in this session. So there is a handy extension called pubspec assist. With this extension, you do not need to physically go to the site and copy and then paste it. You can do it directly from VS Code. So you need to go to the pubspec.yaml file, press, if you have installed the package or extension, then you have to press Control, Shift, and P, and you will get pubspec assist add/update dependencies. You click here and you write Dio. It will add the most updated version of the package here. Or if you do not want to add the extension, then also you can just physically go here, copy from here, and then just paste it here. Now you need to press Control Save or this button that gets the packages. Now we'll be using the Dio package in our home page. So first of all, I need to make this a state full widget, because since we will be updating our page whenever we get the new data from our API, so it needs to change from inside, right? So it cannot just have a stateless widget, since stateless widget cannot change from within itself. So we will press in the stateless widget, we'll bring our cursor here, right click, refactor, and we'll make it a stateful widget. And we'll bring this static constant inside our homepage state class. Now we'll be creating a dio object, and then we'll be writing a function. Let's just write the function and then I'll explain it. The function name will be get news, let's say, and we'll be writing io.get, and here the URL link. We'll get to the URL link a bit later. Let's just understand the function first. Now, the function will return our news info model. Now, we also need a models file to store the model. Here we'll make a new file called okay, and we'll import the news info model. Fine. Now, this function will give us a list of news. So here we are storing the news in a news info model. So this function will also return a list of info model. But will this function return a list of news info model instantly? Obviously not. When you are getting the data from an API, obviously it will take some time to fetch the data from that API. So we need to make this function a future type. Now, what is future? The future class tells that this function will return a news info model, but not instantly. It will take some time, maybe some seconds or minutes, and then it will return the list of news info models. Now, before jumping, I would like to go to Dartpad once again and tell you guys about future, async, and await, how a future function works. In Android, there are two threads. One is an UI thread, and another is the background thread. In the UI thread, there are things that some UI update or changes are going on, and in the background thread, some business logic are going on. But in Flutter, by default, there is only a single thread. So you need to do all the things from a single thread. So updating the UI also goes from that thread. Some business working of some business logic also goes through the UI thread, that single thread. So doing things simultaneously or asynchronously is a bit different here. So for that, we need to understand what are futures, what are async, and what are await. So if I write a future function that returns a string, and I will return it now, this function returns a string called hello after 3 seconds, just after 3 seconds. Now, if you want to see the example here, now, the get string returns a string, but after some times. So we cannot just assign the get string to the hello string, since the hello string variable is a variable of string type. So we write a keyword called await. The await tells Dart that The get string will get us a string, but after some time. And whenever we are using a await inside a function, we need to declare that function an asynchronous function. So we'll write that this method uses some await or gets uses some futures. So we need to declare this main function where we are using the await an asynchronous function, and the await before the method where we are getting the string from. Now if we run this, we'll get hello instantly, and after some time hello after 3 seconds. So this is in simple terms what are future, async, and await. Now using the same logic, we'll also declare our this function an async function, and we'll get a response from our get method, but after awaiting some time. And we need to check what is the response. So just for now, let's print it the response. For now, I am making it a void. Now, more or less, our function is not complete, but to make it complete, we need to go to the API which we will be using. Today, we'll be using a news API. It's a free and open source API if you are using it for educational purposes. Otherwise, it has some pricing options. Now, you can go here, just log in with your email, or if you do not have, you can just set up an account. It's very simple, just an email and password is required. And here we'll be getting our API key. This is a very important key. So whenever you're storing all these types of keys, you do not store it just simply in a file or something. You use some encryption. Flutter has a very useful package called secure storage that uses encryption, keychain in iOS, and encryption in Android for storing the keys secretly. But for here, for the sake of simplicity, we'll just store it in a file called strings, and we'll use a class called. Mind it, this is not string. This is strings, so it's a little bit different than string. Okay. We have stored our API. Now API key. Now let's go to the documentation and see what this API offers. We'll be going to the top headline section inside the documentation, and beneath the endpoint subheading. And here is the URL we'll be using. Not the entire one. We'll just be using up till headlines, top headlines. We'll copy it. And after the question mark, everything you see, country equals US, API key equals whatever API key we will be having, are query parameters. What are query parameters? In simple terms, if I give you an example, you want to buy a car. You go to a dealership and you tell the dealership that you want to buy a car. The dealer shows every kind of car that the dealership has. But after some time, you give a query parameter called that you just want cars of Honda brand. After that, the dealer shows you just the cars of the Honda brand. So this is in simple terms what is query parameters. You can do a lot of other stuffs also, but in this case, we'll be using just for that to filter values or to filter results. And if we go down here, this is the response we'll be getting from the API. It gives us a status of okay, total results, that is total number of results we'll be getting, and an articles. This is the important thing we'll be using and showing in our app. We'll be needing the author, title, the image URL, published at, and content. So let's set up our function. In this, we copied our URL link. We'll be storing it inside the strings file. And inside this get function, we'll be using the API of top headlines, and we'll be giving some query parameters. In this case, we saw we need a country and we need an API key. So let's give that. We'll give API key and our API key, country, and let's give it US only. We do not want to be political in our Indian space. And after that, we'll be seeing what data we get. Now, we'll be running this function inside our build method for now. Now, if we start our app, okay, our app has started, and we can see that we have some data here, which is the status okay, results 38. We just want the articles, so let's print the articles only. Okay, we got what are articles we are having. Now we need to structure the code according, because we do not want this get news function to return a void, but rather we want it to return a news info module. First, we saw that our response is returning a map, which is a string dynamic type. So we'll store the response.data inside a map, and inside the map, we are getting a list of a dynamic type inside the articles section. If we go to our API, we can see that the article returns a list. Okay, so article returns a list of maps, and each map stores the information we need. So if we just print this list, possibly we'll be getting our data. Okay, so we are getting our data. Now, we need to configure this list according to our needs. So if we write list dot map, it's a useful function for uh, changing each and everything inside the list to whatever we want, like let's say e plus something, and we'll be declaring a empty list, and we'll be returning this list. And storing the data whichever we get from our API in the news info model list. And we also need to tell that this is a to list. Now we saw that the articles returns list of map string dynamic. So in our list variable, we are also telling that the article is a list of map string dynamics. And if we hover over here also, we can see that the M is also a map of string dynamics since we are mapping it from list. So we need to convert our map of string dynamics to a news info model. So here we'll be doing that. We'll be returning a news info model with title, that M. If we see here, our title is title. Our date time we are getting from published at, but we are getting it in a string. We need to convert this string to our date time class. So a handy way to do it is datetime dot parse and give the string, which is M and published at. After that, we had some more parameters such as author. Here we'll give author name, and we had content. From here we can get the content. Lastly, image URL, which is URL to image in the API. Now let's see what this gives us. Okay, so here it is giving us an error that is telling that Dart cannot compile a list dynamic to a list map string dynamic. It is a very useful error. So from here we learned that the map articles, although it is showing that it is returning a list of maps, but actually it is just in JSON format. So one thing we can do is make it a list and make another list of map string dynamic. Here we will write it as a map list, and we'll map these items of the list so what we did is this list contained number of items that were dynamic, but we needed it in a map string dynamic structure. So we converted each of the items inside the list from dynamic to a map string dynamic type and stored it in map list. So if we now use the map list here, then we are not getting an error. Now if we just, let's say, for the sake of checking if the API, our function is working correctly or not, we will just print the title of our first news item. Okay, so it is printing our title, which means our function and our API is working fine. Now, since this get news is returning a future, we cannot just simply use it inside our UI, since our UI is built instantly, but the data we are getting from the get news is we are getting it after some time. So we'll be using a widget called a future builder, which takes a future inside it and builds it after the future is completed. So we'll go to our column or our list view. We will just cut it from here, write a future builder in its place, make a builder that takes a context and a snapshot, and will return our list. Now the future builder also takes a future. In this, if we see clearly, it takes a future object, and here we will give it our news get news class. Since this also returns a future object, and here the object is list news info model. Now we also need to specify it here that if our snapshot dot connection state is done, which means we have got our data from our future, then return a list view. Else will show a circular bar, which means just showing that it is still progressing. Okay, let's test it. So our circular bar is showing, and then we are getting the list view. But this is not the list view. This is just the dummy info model. We need a proper list view here. So we'll get rid of the children here, and we'll be using the builder function inside the list view, which takes an item builder, which also takes a context and an index, and we'll be returning the news card here. It also takes an item count that gives us the item count. Now, an interesting thing, the future builder assumes that whatever data we are getting from here can be an object of list news info model, or can be a null type also. So in this case, we need to specify that if future snapshot.data is not null, then we'll use the snapshot.data, else we'll just use 0. And we also need to specify it list that our data we are getting from the future is a list news info model. Okay, sweet. Now, if we go through this future builder once again, the future builder tells Flutter that whatever it is building here will build after some time when we are getting data from a future. This future holds a some future value. In this case, we are you giving it a news get news class that returns a future and we are telling that if our connection state, which means our future has run itself, is done, then we will be returning a list view, else we will be returning a circular progress indicator. So if we rerun it once again, we are getting the data. Okay, so everything is working fine for now. Now let's comes a tricky part, which is this search bar. What we want from the search bar actually, we want that if we type a name or some, let's say, and we press enter or we press this, we get data of that particular news. If we say Tata, we'll get news related to Tata here. So for that also, our news API.org has given us some things. We'll go to the everything endpoint and we'll copy this URL. And here we can see another query parameter, which is Q. The Q is like a keyword. If we give it a keyword of, let's say here in this case, Bitcoin, then we'll get news related to Bitcoin. Let's store the URL first. And we'll be writing another function, or we can do something creative and use just this function only. In the previous sessions, we talked something about named parameters. In this here also, we will give it a named parameter of string search keyword, and we tell Dart that it can be nullable also. So when it is null, we are just simply searching without anything inside the text or search bar. And when it is not null, we'll be telling that Dart that or Flutter that there is some keyword inside our news bar or search bar. Now, when this search keyword is not null, we need to use the everything API. So you will write a search keyword if it is not null, then strings. And yes, Dev, strings is not equals to string. Strings, strings, is a custom class we made, and string is a class that is given to us from Dart itself. So it can confuse a bit, but just an S here. Okay, we'll be using the everything package, that is everything URL or everything API, when our search keyword is not null, and when it is null, we'll be just simply using our top headline package. In query parameters also, the country should only be present when we are using this top headlines, but it should not be present when we are using the API everything package, API. So here also we'll give, if it is equals null, then use the country package, or we can write just an if statement here. We also want, whenever we are using the API everything, we want this Q to be present. It has to be present. So we are writing here as if search keyword is not null, which means we are using this API endpoint, then we'll be using the Q, and this Q will be the search keyword. Okay. Now we need to go to our text field, and there is a named parameter called on submitted, which gives us a string. And here we will call our package. But there is a flaw in our code. If we call the get news package with the search text word here, nothing will change. even if we write here anything. Since we are not updating anything inside our news builder widget. So what we need to do is, instead of get news, we need to pass it a future variable. This future initially will just get a news, or we'll be declaring this future as late. This late keyword is a new keyword which we are learning here. The late tells that the future, right now we are not declaring anything, but later on it will have some value and it will never be null. So here we'll also be using init state. What is init state? This init state is a function which runs only once when the UI is first made, which means whenever our home page is made for the first time, the init function will be called. Here we'll tell to assign the future to get news. We need to rebuild whenever we are using this news init state method. And now we can do here is future equals get news with search keyword. Let's see if anything changes or not. Okay, so our initial build is happening. Now if we search anything, let's say, and press enter or press submit, nothing is happening. Why is this? We haven't told Dart to rebuild itself. Just assigning our variable to a new function or a new value is not enough to tell Dart or Flutter to rebuild our screen. We need something called a set state. The set state is a function that specifically tells Flutter that you need to, there has been some changes made and you need to rebuild this particular screen where our set state is being called. So again, if we explain, our set state tells Flutter that there has been some changes, some change in variable or UI or anything, and you need to rebuild the screen. So that is done by set state, rebuilding the screen. Another thing, we need to tell that if str dot is empty, we'll be using get news. Else we'll be using the search keyword. Now if we write, let's say, if we write apple and submit it, okay, we are not getting same result which we expected. Why is that? Let's see. In this, we declare that if string is not empty, we use this just future equals get, and if it is, here is the, we should have written it as empty. If it is empty, we'll just get the normal news. If it is not empty, we'll get the search news. So now if we write apple, we get the apple news. Cool. Okay, so our API is working, our app is working. We have integrated the app with our API, and there are no errors as of now, right? Actually, there is not an error, but a design flaw in our code. Here, we are returning the news info model and we are hard coding these values here, which should never be done, because let's say if we are making another function called get news while something or another function, then again we have to write this entire thing. And according to solid principles, or a principle called never repeat yourself, so we should not repeat this, right? It should be in a place, and we just need to call this, and we should get everything that is present here. Exactly, we will be doing it right now. Let's go to our model class, and here we will be writing a from method, which will be a factory. Okay. Before declaring anything or writing any further code, we need to understand what is actually this. This method returns a news info model, and it returns it, and it takes a map. So basically it converts a map string dynamic to a news info model class. Now, what is this factory? There are two types of patterns. One is a factory pattern or a factory function. Another is a singleton. A singleton means if we declare a singleton here, and we write some object, let's say, it means that this object we are using throughout our app. The same object. We are not updating, changing, or making a new object. We are using this same exact object throughout our app. This is a singleton. Factory is exactly the opposite, which means whenever you are calling the from method, we are making a new object of the news info model. So whenever you will be calling this from method, you will be making a new instance or a new object of this news info model. And in case of singleton, you will be using the single object throughout your app. This is a very simple explanation of factory and singleton. Obviously, there are more things to it. Now, let's set up our thing. Just we do not need to do anything. Copy everything from here, cut, go to our model, paste it. And here we wrote m, so here also we'll give it m. Now, this tells that if title is empty or null, then you just use no title string. Since we specifically told that the title can never be a null variable, so for precautionary causes, we are using this. It tells that if title is null, then use just another title, and everything else is up to the point which we wanted, since we declared everything else to be null, and date time will always be there. We go to our home page and we write info model dot from map and use the map here. We are done. So whenever we want to convert a map to a news info model, we just call this class, call this function. Okay, so our UI is working great. We are getting the data from our API. Our search, oh, I thought user. Our search is also working, which basically means we are done with the API integration part. So here we integrated our API. We made some changes to our code, wrote some new functions, and updated the UI according to whatever value we are getting. We learned about future async await. We also learned how to use the dio package to add external APIs, and we learned something about factory, singleton, and various different things. And we also learned about the from map, which saves us a lot of time. Now, we are done with this session. In the next session, we will be separating our business logic with the UI. This is also separation to a class, but it is not separating it according to our exact needs. In the next session, we'll be separating in such a way that you can test your code using writing test. So next session will be on state management. We'll be using the provider state management, which is Google supported state management, and it is also very recommended in the Flutter community. The next session, I believe, will be on 19th. So thank you for attending this session, and see you in the next one.